All right, we're on part 2 of the study guide, unit 2. So we stopped at RAPS. So we stopped at this First Amendment one. So the 12th Amendment is created like clarifying like the Electoral College, and it clarifies like how we vote for the president. So we cast one vote for two people at the same time. So when you vote for the president, you are also voting for his or her running mate, her vice president or his vice president. So think about 1-2, one vote for two people. The abolishment of slavery is the 13th Amendment. Remember, the easy way to remember the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment is free citizens vote. The 7th Amendment is civil trial. So anytime you are suing someone and it's an excessive amount of $20 or more, you can technically demand a jury trial. The 26th Amendment lowered the legal voting age from 21 to 18, and this is really because of Vietnam. So Vietnam has happened, people have been drafted, young men have been drafted to go serve, and they are serving in a war that they never had voted for the president or for any of the government officials that had sent them. So we lower the voting age to 18. The graduated income tax is a progressive tax. So the more money you make, the more the government takes. And that's going to be the 16th Amendment. So with the 16th Amendment, what you start to see happening is the higher your income, the higher your ability to pay the tax. The Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. So you have the right to have weapons, a gun. I mean, there are limits to it. States do place limits on guns and gun control. But technically, in the country, you have the Second Amendment right. The 27th Amendment says that Congress cannot vote themselves a pay raise in the same congressional session. So they were, a long time ago, able to vote themselves a pay raise, and they were able to get it. Well, now they have to actually come back in, and then they can get the pay raise. So they won't get it that year, they'd get it the next year. So the 18th Amendment is the prohibition or the legalization of alcohol. So remember, for 16, 17, 18, I gave you guys TSAW. Taxes, senators, alcohol, women. Okay. So for the 18th Amendment, you could not make, sell, distribute alcohol. So the next one, the next amendment is the Fifth Amendment. You have the right to no self-incrimination. When the cops come and ask you questions, you don't have to answer any question that could incriminate you at the time. Same thing with the right to a grand jury. This is a pre-trial. So if you feel that the state is bringing a charge against you that they're not going to be able to prove, you can ask for a grand jury, which is kind of like a pre-trial. If the grand jury trial, like they say, you know what, there's not enough evidence, the state might not go forward with the case. No double jeopardy. If the jury has reached a verdict, whether it's innocent or guilty, the law cannot come back after you. So if it's a hung jury, they can come back after you. A hung jury means the jury did not make a decision. But if they made a decision and they acquit you of the crime, it cannot come back after you. The government cannot come back after you. Due process is the right to have a trial. So if you're charged with a crime, you have the right to have your case heard. And eminent domain is dealing with government taking property. If the government takes your property, they have to give you just compensation. They have to pay you for property. The 20th Amendment changes the inauguration of the president, the swearing in, to January 20th. So every 4 years, January 20th, we will have a presidential swear-in. The 15th Amendment is voting rights to all citizens. And this is the racial suffrage one. You cannot be denied your right to vote based on your race. And so that gave black males the right to vote. The 21st Amendment repealed the 18th. So think about, this, you have to be 21 to drink, okay? And so the 18th Amendment had said no alcohol. The 21st says alcohol is fine, is the 21st Amendment. The 10th Amendment is states' rights. So I had you guys add WA, so Iowa. So states' rights. Anything that's not given to the federal government goes to the states. The 22nd Amendment limits the presidency to 2 terms only. So you get 2 terms, TT, 2 terms only. For the 25th Amendment, it actually established the presidential succession. So if something happened to the president, the vice president would assume the office. If the vice president is unable or unwilling to assume office, then the Speaker of the House would get the actual position. So it just clarified it, and we have had at this point presidents who have left office or who died in office, and a vice president has taken the place, not taken. So what ends up happening is it just clarifies it. Okay. The next one is the 17th Amendment. That's the direct election of the senator. So whoever gets the most votes wins the Senate position. The 14th Amendment is citizenship. So citizen to all persons born on U.S. soil is extended, and anyone who is a U.S. citizen is entitled to due process with equal protection under the law. So if you're a U.S. citizen, you are entitled to equal protection. And I told you the 14th Amendment's the most important amendment because that is the amendment that all civil rights and civil liberty cases are pretty much fought under. If you feel that someone is discriminating against you and they're not giving you equal protection, that would be the amendment you would fight under. The Third Amendment is no quartering of soldiers or military in your home. So you don't have to open up your home to soldiers. They'll never come and stay with you. The 23rd Amendment gave the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., the right to vote in the Electoral College. They had not been able to vote, and now they can. The 20th Amendment, I repeated this one, it moves the presidency to January 20th. Okay. The 24th Amendment abolished poll tax. You used to have to pay in order to vote, and that really eliminated people who were poor, from voting. So if you were someone who didn't have spare cash to vote, they had pretty much eliminated you with this poll tax. So this amendment says you cannot charge people to vote. The 19th Amendment gives women suffrage or voting rights, and the 9th Amendment gives power to the people. So that's the People's Rights Amendment. The next question, question 10, is which branch makes the law? It's Congress. It's the legislative branch. So legislative branch is the title of the branch. And when you look at what actually the legislative branch is, it's Congress. And Congress is made up of the House and the Senate. So when you use the word Congress, you are saying House and Senate together. Okay. The 11th question, or question 11, is which branch enforces the law? That's the executive. And so that would be the president, the vice president, and their cabinet. Okay. The next question, question 12, is which branch interprets the law? It's the Supreme Court that's the head of the judicial branch, but it's the judicial branch that's going to actually interpret whether laws are legal or illegal based on the Constitution. Nothing can be in violation of the United States Constitution. So this is the swearing in of Sandra Day O'Connor. The next question, question 13, is what are the requirements to be a senator? You have to be at least 30 years old. You do have to be a U.S. citizen for at least 9 years, which means you could have been a former immigrant who became a U.S. citizen. You are a naturalized citizen, okay? And you have to be a resident of the state. So we make 30 years old the requirement. You're a little bit more established. You have a family. You're invested in the country. And so you have to be a U.S. citizen for at least 9 years and a resident of the state so you know what the issues are, the problems are in the state. Question number 14 is what are the requirements to be a House member? So you have to be at least 25 years old and you have to be a U.S. citizen for at least 7 years. So again, you could be an immigrant who becomes a U.S. citizen and you have to be a resident of the state. We have requirements to be the Senate and the House because we want to establish some protocol of who can hold the job. But for the House and for the Senate, you can be an immigrant who becomes a U.S. Senate or becomes a U.S. citizen. The presidency is different. So question 15, what are the requirements to be president of the United States? You have to be at least 35 years old. You have to be a natural-born U.S. citizen, and that means that you are either born to U.S. citizens or you were born on U.S. soil. And those are the two ways you are at birth a U.S. citizen. And then you have to be a resident of the U.S. for at least 14 years. And so you do have to have some home, some property here, okay? Question 16, explain the electoral process for the president. So first, you and me, the people, we vote in the general election in November. The next vote really comes in December, but it's the Electoral College. So the second time we'll have the Electoral College vote, and it's just made up of your House and your Senate members, and they vote, and that's the official vote for the presidency. And so this is the election in 1952. So in 1952, this guy in blue, who is Dwight Eisenhower, I mean, you can see he pretty much hands down won the country in 1952 for the presidency. For today, you have to get at least 270 of the Electoral College votes to win, and that means you have a majority of the Electoral College. If there is ever a tie or not a clear winner, let's say, you don't get the 270 mark, then the actual House of Representatives will decide who's going to be the President of the United States. Question 17, explain the election of senators and House of Representative members. In this, it's just simple majority. Whoever gets the most votes wins. So if you ain't first, you're last then. So for the Senate and for the House members, whoever gets the most votes on the night of election has won the seat, and they are now the new representative from that state. 18 is asking you which part or parts of the legislative branch do the following actually apply to. So the Senate is going to approve all treaties. The Senate mainly deals with like foreign affairs stuff, so that's going to be their kind of like area. The House and the Senate both serve in the Electoral College. So North Carolina has 15 Electoral College votes. We have 13 House members, 2 senators. So they vote in December of 2020 for our president, for us. They both have the ability to create proposed laws or bills, but the House is the one that actually controls all revenue bills. That's why we say they have the power of the purse. So when you were looking at the one slide that had like the House, had a purse on there, and that's why they have the power of the purse. You don't leave the House without your purse, and so they deal with your money. The Speaker of the House leads the House of Representatives, Speaker of the House. The Senate pro temp, or the President pro temp, is going to be the senator. That's the leader of the Senate. But the Vice President is technically the #1 leader in the Senate. So it'll go Vice President, President pro temp, and then it's just senators. That's how it works for the Senate. But remember, the Vice President rarely goes to the Senate. They go to show the influence of the President, and then they go to cast the tie-breaking vote. So if there's a tie in the Senate, which there's a possibility, there's only 100 of them, so you could have 50 yeses, 50 noes, the Vice President will cast his ballot to break the tie. And we've seen that with like presidential cabinet appointees. Begins the impeachment process against any executive and judicial branch members is going to be the House. The House begins, the Senate ends. So the Senate will hold the trial for any impeachments against the executive and judicial branch members. So they're actually going to go ahead and hold the trial and do the conviction or acquittal part. They can use filibusters and clockshers. A filibuster is talking a bill to death, which means there's no time limit on it. And there's no time limit on speaking in the Senate. There are time limits in the House. So, and a clockshare is to end the filibuster. So it's a call to end it. Then uses the committee systems to get most of the work done. That's both the House and the Senate. So both of them actually get assigned committees when they get appointed or they get elected to the House and the Senate. So they'll get on committees that will benefit their state. So remember, we looked at it like in North Carolina, a lot of people want to be on the VA, the Veterans Affairs Committee. Use the seniority system in the selection of committees. Both of them do that as well. So the House and the Senate, the people who have served the longest are going to get the choice positions in that House, okay, or in the Senate.